Welcome to today's screencast on topic 510, the consequences of agricultural practices. In this lesson, we'll explore how different agricultural practices not only impact the economy and food supply, but also shape the environment, society, and culture. Agriculture plays a central role in our daily lives, but the way we cultivate crops and raise livestock has far-reaching consequences that affect everything from land use and climate change to social inequalities and global trade patterns. We'll examine how both intensive and extensive farming methods contribute to issues like deforestation, soil degradation, and water shortages, as well as the implications of technological advancements in farming. Additionally, we'll discuss how agricultural practices influence the patterns of urbanization, labor migration, and global food distribution. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a better understanding of how human activity in agriculture can create both positive and negative outcomes, shaping our world in complex and interconnected ways. For this topic, you'll need to understand the environment and social consequences of agricultural practices, which are important to understand because they shape our planet in significant ways. Agricultural land use can lead to various forms of pollution, such as pesticide runoff, water contamination, and air pollution from equipment and burning. Another major environmental impact is land cover change. Deforestation results in loss of biodiversity, increased carbon emissions, and disruption of local ecosystems. Similarly, agricultural practices like shifting cultivation or slash and burn clear forests to make room for new plots, which can lead to erosion, decreased soil fertility, and long-term ecological damage. Desertification is another critical issue leading to the gradual spread of desert-like conditions. This has devastating impacts on both the environment and local communities who rely on the land for farming. Soil salinization occurs when the soil becomes saturated with salts, which often results from poor irrigation practices, particularly in arid regions. On a more positive note, conservation efforts are being made to mitigate some of these environmental consequences. Practices like terracing, contour farming, and crop rotation help reduce soil erosion, maintain soil health, and protect water resources. Agricultural practices themselves alter the landscape. For example, irrigation systems, while essential for farming in dry areas, can lead to the depletion of water sources and the salinization of soil. Deforestation, as mentioned earlier, disrupts entire ecosystems, while draining wetlands for agriculture use leads to loss of biodiversity and the destruction of natural water filtration systems. Pastoral nomadism, though often seen as sustainable in some regions, can also lead to overgrazing and land degradation if not managed properly. In summary, agricultural practices, while essential for feeding the world's population, have a wide range of environmental effects that require careful management to avoid long-term damage. Understanding these impacts will help us better understand the challenges we face in making agriculture more sustainable and equitable for all. So let's take a look at the social consequences of these practices in the next section. Shifting cultivation is an agricultural practice commonly found in peripheral and semi-peripheral regions of the world, including parts of South America, Central and West Africa, and Southeast Asia. It's often practiced by subsistence farmers who use a particular plot of land for a period before moving on to a new area. The process begins with farmers clearing the land, usually by cutting down vegetation and burning it, which releases nutrients into the soil. This allows them to plant crops, typically for their own consumption. However, over time, the soil becomes less fertile due to constant farming. To address this, farmers leave the land fallow, or uncultivated, for a period of time to allow the soil to regenerate and regain its fertility. The length of this fallow period is crucial for the land to recover its nutrients. Ideally, the longer the fallow period, the better the land can restore itself. The problem arises when the land is not given a sufficient fallow period, or when there's pressure to keep farming in the same area due to population growth or other economic pressures. This can result in soil degradation, as the land becomes increasingly depleted of nutrients. In the long run, this degradation makes the land unsuitable for cultivation and forces farmers to clear more land, which further contributes to deforestation and environmental harm. Shifting cultivation, while providing short-term benefits for farmers, can have significant long-term effects on the landscape. Without careful management and adequate fallow periods, The practice can lead to land exhaustion, reduced agricultural productivity, and permanent environmental damage. Slash and burn agriculture is a specific form of shifting cultivation that has a more permanent impact on the landscape compared to other agricultural practices. As the name suggests, this method involves cutting down and burning forests to create fields for cultivation. The burning process releases nutrients from the trees and vegetation into the soil, which temporarily boosts fertility and makes it easier for farmers to grow crops. While the immediate effects may seem beneficial for farmers, the long-term consequences are more damaging. The process of clearing the land results in deforestation, as large areas of forests are destroyed to make way for farming. This loss of forests is a significant environmental issue because trees play a crucial role in preventing soil erosion and maintaining the balance of ecosystems. Without trees to anchor the soil, it becomes more prone to erosion, especially during heavy rains. In addition to deforestation, slash and burn agriculture contributes to the broader issue of soil degradation. Over time, the repeated practice of cutting and burning land can deplete the soil of its nutrients, making it less fertile and unsuitable for farming. This leads to the need for new land, perpetuating a cycle of destruction. In fact, studies show that half the world's topsoil has been lost in the past 150 years, much of it due to practices like slash and burn agriculture. In conclusion, while slash and burn farming may provide short-term benefits by enriching the soil, it has lasting consequences on the environment. Deforestation, soil erosion, and the loss of valuable topsoil are just a few of the negative impacts, highlighting the need for far more sustainable agricultural practices. Terrace farming is an agricultural practice typically used by subsistence farmers living in mountainous areas. This technique involves creating steps or terraces into the sides of hills or mountain slopes. These steps are designed to slow down and manage the flow of water, making it possible to cultivate crops on land that would otherwise be too steep or rocky to farm. Terrace farming is especially useful for growing water-intensive crops, such as rice, which require careful irrigation to thrive. One of the key benefits of terrace farming is its ability to manage water runoff during rainfall. Without the terraces, water would flow quickly down the hillside, potentially washing away valuable soil and crops. However, the terraces trap water in each step, allowing it to flood evenly through the steps without eroding the soil or uprooting the plants. This system helps maintain soil structure and prevent soil erosion, which is a common issue in mountainous regions. By creating these terraces, farmers are able to cultivate land that would otherwise be considered non-arable due to its steepness. This method allows communities to make the most of their environment, providing them with an opportunity to grow food in otherwise challenging conditions. Overall, terrace farming is an example of how human ingenuity can adapt to the natural landscape, enabling sustainable agricultural practices in areas that would be difficult to farm using traditional methods. Irrigation is a method used to supplement rainfall by bringing water from natural sources such as rivers, lakes, or underground aquifers to farm fields. This is done through systems of canals, ditches, and other infrastructure designed to transport water to areas that may not receive enough rainfall to support crops. Irrigation is crucial in areas where rainfall is unreliable or insufficient for farming, and it enables the cultivation of crops in regions that would otherwise struggle to produce food. In some areas, reservoirs and aquifers are used to store and supply water for irrigation. These water sources are tapped into and managed to ensure that there is enough water for agricultural needs, even during dry periods. However, while irrigation has allowed agriculture to expand in arid and semi-arid regions, it also has significant impacts on the landscape. One of the most notable consequences is the depletion of water resources. As water is diverted for irrigation, natural water sources can be overexploited, leading to lower water levels in rivers, lakes, and aquifers. This can result in long-term environmental challenges, including reduced water availability for other uses, such as drinking or industry. Additionally, irrigation can lead to changes in the cultural landscape, as it often requires the construction of extensive networks of canals and reservoirs that can alter natural environments and local ecosystems. In some cases, the overuse of irrigation can also contribute to soil salinization, where water evaporates and leaves behind salts, making the soil less fertile. This is a concern in areas with poor drainage or where irrigation systems are improperly managed. Overall, while irrigation has revolutionized agriculture, it also requires careful management to avoid environmental degradation and ensure the sustainability of water resources. Pastoral nomadism is a form of subsistence farming practiced primarily in semi-arid and arid climates, where water and fertile land are scarce. This agricultural system involves herders who move their animals seasonally in search of fresh grazing land. Unlike settled farming, pastoral nomads do not cultivate the land, but rely on the natural vegetation and water sources to sustain their livestock, such as goats, sheep, or camels. However, pastoral nomadism can have significant environmental impacts. As herders move their animals over large areas, they often overgraze specific regions, which can lead to soil erosion. When animals graze too intensively on the vegetation, they strip the land of its plant cover, leaving the soil exposed to wind and water erosion. Over time, this can cause the soil to degrade, making it harder for plants to grow back. The practice can also contribute to desertification, a process in which formerly fertile lands become infertile and transform into desert-like conditions. This is often exacerbated by droughts, which further limit the availability of water for both livestock and plant life. Overgrazing, combined with lack of water, leads to a vicious cycle where the land cannot recover, and fertile land slowly turns into barren, unusable terrain. While pastoral nomadism has been practiced for centuries and is a critical part of survival in certain regions, it's important to recognize its potential long-term impacts on the environment. Sustainable land management and careful grazing practices are essential to prevent soil erosion and desertification from taking hold in these vulnerable areas. Draining wetlands is a process where areas of land covered by water, such as swamps, marshes, and bogs, are cleared and converted into arable land for farming or habitation. Wetlands are unique ecosystems that play important roles in filtering water, providing habitats, and helping control flooding. However, in many parts of the world, wetlands have been drained to make room for agriculture and urban development. One example of large-scale wetland drainage can be seen in the Netherlands, where 17% of the country's total land area was reclaimed for farming and habitation. While this has allowed for more land to be used for human purposes, the environmental consequences have been significant. Wetlands are rich in biodiversity, supporting a variety of species, including fish, waterfowl, and other mammals. When these wetlands are drained, it leads to the loss of important habitats for these creatures, which can cause a decline in their populations. Draining wetlands also increases the risks of storm and flood damage. Wetlands act as natural buffers by absorbing excess water during heavy rains and storms. Without these areas to store water, the risk of flooding increases, and storm surges can cause more destruction to nearby areas. Additionally, wetlands help maintain water quality by filtering pollutants before they enter larger bodies of water, so their loss can contribute to pollution and water quality issues as well. While draining wetlands may provide short-term benefits for agriculture and urbanization, it also comes with long-term environmental costs, including loss of biodiversity, increased flood risk, and the degradation of critical ecosystems. Therefore, it's essential to carefully consider the trade-offs and seek sustainable methods of land use that balance human development with environmental preservation. Pollution is one of the significant environmental consequences of agricultural practices, particularly as farming expands to meet growing demands. One area where pollution is increasingly problematic is in the production of meat. As the demand for meat rises globally, more livestock are raised, leading to increased animal waste. This waste can contain harmful substances such as bacteria and nitrates, which can leach into water sources and soil. When contaminated, water enters rivers, lakes, or groundwater, it can lead to serious health problems for humans and wildlife, including illness and the degradation of aquatic ecosystems. In addition to animal waste, the use of pesticides and herbicides in agriculture contributes to pollution in multiple ways. These chemicals are designed to control pests and weeds, but they often end up in places where they're not needed. When these chemicals are sprayed on crops, they can enter the air, soil, and water through runoff. This runoff can carry harmful chemicals into nearby rivers and lakes, where they can contaminate drinking water and harm aquatic life. Wildlife habitats can also be damaged as these chemicals disrupt the balance of local ecosystems. Another form of pollution comes from the use of fossil fuels in agricultural machinery and transportation. The burning of fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which contributes to climate change. As agricultural machinery is used to plant, cultivate, and harvest crops, the emissions from these machines add to the overall carbon footprint of farming. This results in increased temperatures, altered weather patterns, and more extreme weather events that can negatively affect farming in the long run. Overall, agricultural practices can significantly contribute to pollution, whether it's through animal waste, chemical runoff, or the burning of fossil fuels. These pollutants can have lasting effects on water quality, soil health, and wildlife, making it essential for farmers and policymakers to explore more sustainable practices to reduce the environmental impact of agriculture. Soil salinization is an environmental issue that can arise as a result of certain agricultural practices, particularly in areas where irrigation is commonly used. This process occurs when salts build up in the soil due to the evaporation of water from the ground. In regions with high evaporation rates, such as arid or semi-arid climates, the water that is used for irrigation can evaporate faster than it's replenished by natural rainfall or other water sources. As the water evaporates, it leaves behind the salts that were originally dissolved in it, causing a gradual accumulation in the soil. The accumulation of salt in the soil can create significant challenges for farmers. Salt interferes with the ability of plants to absorb water, making it difficult for crops to grow. In fact, high levels of salt can strip nutrients from the soil, further hindering plant growth and potentially reducing crop yields. This process is especially problematic in areas where land is being intensively irrigated, as irrigation relies on the consistent application of water to fields. As more and more land is put under irrigation, or when wetlands are drained to make land more suitable for farming, the issue of soil salinization is rapidly increasing. This means that farmers must take extra precautions to manage water resources and soil health to prevent long-term damage to agricultural land. Soil salinization can lead to reduced agricultural productivity and even the abandonment of once productive farmland if the issue becomes too severe. It is a significant environmental challenge, and as more land is irrigated to meet global food demands, managing and preventing soil salinization will become increasingly important to ensure sustainable farming practices. One significant example of soil salinization as an environmental effect of agriculture can be seen in the Aral Sea in Central Asia. Starting in the 1960s, the Soviet Union began diverting the rivers that fed the Aral Sea in order to irrigate desert regions for cotton production. This major agricultural shift aimed to expand cotton farming, but it had serious consequences for both the environment and the local economy. As the rivers were redirected, the water levels of the Aral Sea began to decline dramatically. This drop in water levels led to a number of environmental problems, including the buildup of salts in the soil, a direct result of the loss of fresh water. With the lack of sufficient water replenished, the soil became salinized or salty, which severely impacted the ability of crops to grow in the affected areas. Additionally, the salinization of the water in the sea killed off many fish species that had once thrived in the Aral Sea, leading to a collapse in the local fishing economy. The consequences of this agricultural practice didn't just stop with the environmental degradation. The cultural landscape was also changed. Communities that depended on fishing industry for their livelihoods saw a dramatic shift in their way of life as the fishing industry collapsed. The environmental impact of this large-scale irrigation project serves as a reminder of the unintended consequences of agricultural practices and the need for careful planning when making decisions that affect both the land and local communities. Deforestation is another significant environmental impact of agriculture, and it's particularly noticeable in tropical rainforests such as the Amazon rainforest in South America, as well as the rainforests in Indonesia and Malaysia. The rising global demand for various products has led to the widespread conversion of these forests into land for agricultural use. There are several factors driving this deforestation, including the logging industry, slash-and-burn farming, cattle grazing, and commercial agriculture, especially for crops like palm oil. In many regions, the logging industry clears forests for timber and other resources. Additionally, slash-and-burn farming, a practice where forests are cut down and burned to create land for farming, is often used by small-scale subsistence farmers. This method, while temporarily effective, contributes to the long-term degradation of the soil and increases the amount of carbon released into the atmosphere. Large-scale cattle grazing has also contributed to deforestation, particularly in countries like Brazil, where forests are cleared to make room for pasture land. Another major cause of deforestation in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia is the expansion of commercial agriculture, particularly the growth of palm oil plantations. Palm oil is used in a wide range of products, from food to cosmetics, but the demand for it has led to the clearing of vast areas of tropical rainforests. The environmental consequences of deforestation are severe. As trees are cut down, greenhouse gas emissions increase, contributing to climate change. Additionally, the loss of trees results in soil erosion, as the roots that once held the soil together are removed. The destruction of rainforests also leads to the loss of biodiversity, as countless plant and animal species lose their habitats. Deforestation, while often driven by the need for agricultural expansion, has lasting and far-reaching environmental effects that impact not only the local ecosystems, but the entire planet.